Just going to give it a few seconds for participants to fully join. Okay. Well, hello and welcome everyone to this virtual pharmacy school fair workshop. I am Danielle Stubbs-Kirkland from AECP, and I'll be moderating the session. We'll get started with today's session, Becoming a Competitive PharmD Applicant, in just a moment. But first, just a few housekeeping items. Although you'll be muted throughout the entirety of the webinar, please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A window or the chat box throughout the webinar. We have saved some time after the presentation to address those questions, but if there are any questions that we don't get to, the speaker will be available in their booth during the expo hours from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern, so we highly encourage you to visit their virtual booth at that time. Additionally, this presentation will be recorded and available immediately afterward in the Sessions tab. Now I will turn it over to our speaker to get started.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Sheila Weir. I'm an admissions counselor at the College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences over at Campbell University. I'm very pleased to be here today. One of my jobs as an admissions counselor is to work with students as they apply to grad school. And one of the key things that we find and are asked is what makes a competitive applicant. So today's session is to give you some insight from a Campbell perspective for sure. But many of the things that I'm going to highlight are things that you should expect to also run into at other universities that you're applying to. So I really want to dissect what that competitive meaning is and look at all of the areas of an application that make it competitive. I encourage you to type in your questions as we go, as I suspect there will be questions, and I'm happy to dive into those. So walking in first, let me just find my mouse here. Danielle, can you assist in going to the next slide? I can't hear you. You've got your mute on.
Bottom of the left-hand side of your screen, there might be some arrows that pop up when you hover over it, or you should just be able to, yep, there you go.
There we go. Thank you. I was looking on the wrong screen. Technology. All right, guys. So what does competitive actually mean? I can tell you what it doesn't mean. It does not mean perfection. It does not mean flawless. We often hear our students thinking that they have to put forth a perfect, flawless, with no bumps in their history application, and that is, in fact, not at all the case. There are four main components that make an application competitive, according to CPHS, which is a College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences. One is your academic readiness. How ready are you in meeting the rigors of graduate school? And we're going to dive into each of these four things shortly. The other thing is your professional motivation. What has sparked this desire to pursue a profession in pharmacy? I want to look at your professional resilience and integrity. Those things are really key when we're looking at grad schools. That may not be what you needed to demonstrate when you're getting into undergrad school, but it certainly is a chapter of you that we want to see at the grad level. And then, of course, lastly, but not least, is your alignment with healthcare values. This is super, super important. We are very excited because when we look at applicants, we look at them uniquely by themselves as individuals, and every applicant will bring a very unique story and perspective to the application process. So I often hear students do comparisons between themselves and other students, and I just want to let you know and reassure you that that is not something that you need to do. We're really interested in knowing who you are and what makes you so different and unique for our program. So let's look at academic readiness or preparedness. Obviously, these are all of the academic asks that universities will ask of you. So what are your overall GPA, both either science related and or your overall GPA, your prerequisite courses? What does that look like? Can you demonstrate that you've got the academic standing behind your application to be successful in this chapter of your life? At Campbell, we're looking at a 2.75. That is our GPA kind of milestone. And that is, of course, calculated through PharmCAS. I will warn you, give you a little heads up that PharmCAS will do its own little baby calculation of your GPA. So you might think you've got a number and PharmCAS is going to come up with maybe slightly different number. It won't be vastly different, but a little bit. And we will be going by the PharmCast calculation of your GPA. We're also looking at not just, of course, a solid GPA and some great grades, but we're also looking at if you've had perhaps a moment in your academic career of maybe you ran into some challenges and you've got some grades that are a little bit lower, or maybe a point in your career where it hasn't been very high. I'm as interested in the performance that's happened since that moment as I am seeing a really great grade. In fact, I personally get a little bit more interested in those candidates that show me that they've really kind of risen from the ashes, if you will, from a hard time. So that improvement upward matters. I don't want you to self-select yourself or deselect yourself from being a competitive applicant because you had a bad spell. That's not at all something that's going to work against you, as long as I can see that there's also been, that movement upwards. That's important too. And of course, I want to make sure that you've met all of the requirements in the prerequisite courses. And part of that is I want to know that you've got that background so that you can be successful when you come into the program. And I also want to make sure that you can handle the rigors of grad school. Grad school, no matter what program you go to, is going to be a little bit different than undergrad. The pace is a little bit faster. The information is coming at you a little bit harder. And so we need to make sure that you've got all of the standing that you need so that you can be successful when you're working through the program. Let's talk experience. Experience is something that is really, really key. We had talked about on the first slide what makes an applicant competitive. And part of that is seeing your commitment to the profession. Saying that you're committed to it and showing me that you're committed are very different things. And so I want to hear that you're committed, but I also want to see that you're committed. And how I see that is through the experience that you've done. That experience is all experience. So I'm talking about clinical experience, volunteer experience, research, shadowing. All of it is going to count. And it does not all have to be in the healthcare field. If you decided that you were volunteering by walking dogs or collecting food cans for a food drive, those things are all very important because they speak to your mindset. They speak to your servitude mentality. And that is something at Campbell that is very, very important. It demonstrates your commitment to service. And in many cases, it also captures your commitment to patient care. And so those things are, for us, very important. For our program, the PharmD program at Campbell, any pharmacy experience that you have is going to be taken into consideration and looked at. That's any internships or shadowing that you've done. It also just really demonstrates that you put some thought into the program and into the profession. And it's not just something that looks good on paper, but it's something that you've actually been committed to and working towards for longer than just a heartbeat. So it's one of the reasons why experience is so important to us, and we do take a look at that. The other thing I wanted to say before we move on about the experience is it really shows us how you're going to be working with patients. That's really important at Campbell. We want to make sure that not only are you a strong professional, but that you're a professional in your field that is going to be giving back to the industry and to the healthcare industry to make it a better, more impactful place to be. And so that's something that's important in our industry to make sure that we're demonstrating. So anything that demonstrates that is important. I'll also let you guys know that as far as experience go, when we're looking at that volunteer component, if you're doing any volunteering, say with your local church or at the university that you're going to right now, big or small, it doesn't really matter what it is. I like to know that you've got some leadership skills, and that can often be found through our efforts with volunteering. So do some thinking about that to see what you've got, so that can be included in your application. Our personal statement. Can I tell you how many times people put this to the very bottom of the list of things that they need to do in their application package? And it is probably one of the most important things in the package that you yourself will do. It is a very important part. And so I'm going to encourage you, start this chapter early, early, early. Start it early. And it does not start by picking up a pen or paper or pulling out the keyboard and starting to type. It actually starts with reflection. I know that throws people off when I say that. They think, what? I have to start writing a personal statement through reflection? And the answer is absolutely. Sitting down and thinking about where you've been. Where do you want to go? What kind of battles have you come across already in your undergrad degrees, or sorry, undergrad years, or in your life just at all? How have you overcome those things? A question that I start when I talk to my students is, what's important to you? What are your values? If I asked you what your top 3 values are, could you write those down and tell me what they are? Because those 3 values should be connected to your profession of choice. And so if you're looking for a degree in pharmacy and you want to move forward and practice, then I want to know that your values as a human being, as a person, are also intertwined with the values that go along with being a pharmacist. It's a really important component to your application. So start with reflection, everybody. And throughout your personal statement, I'd like to see a really clear motivation for why you've picked pharmacy and why you're moving forward with the PharmD program. This should not be something that you just woke up one day and decided you're going to pursue. It should be something that you've been working towards, as I've said before, for a period of time. I want to see in your personal statement as Campbell University, I want to see that your values and your thoughts and your thinking align with my values and my thoughts and my thinking. And when I say mine, I don't mean mine, Sheila. I mean mine, Campbell University, the College of Pharmacy and Health Science. I want to know that we are speaking the same language on what's important to us. I want to know when I read your personal statement that you've got strong communication skills and patterns. And communication, by the way, is a two-way skill. It is the act of not only communicating, but also listening. So keep that in mind. And I want to know that you have professionalism, not only in how you conduct yourself, but the way you think about your role as a pharmacist and as a pharmacist candidate. So these are really strong things. It should be packaged up in your personal statement so that if I ripped away your GPA or I removed your letters of recommendation, I removed anything else that I had on the table concerning you, I could read your personal statement and I should be able to have a really good sense of who you are as an individual and what you're going to bring to the profession. Most importantly, I want you to be authentically you in the writing of your personal statement. I often will have people say, well, what do you want me to say? What do you want to hear when you're reading a personal statement? Or I've heard this as well, where people say, well, I've talked to 15 people and they think I should do X. So I'd like to guide you back to you and to yourself and to that moment of reflection and really figuring out who you are, what's important to you, and why you're moving forward in this. Think of your aha moment for starting this chapter and be authentic, because honestly, it's the thing that you bring to this process that nobody else brings. Letters of recommendation. What makes a strong recommender? I can tell you pretty quickly what makes a very strong recommender, and therefore a strong letter of recommendation, is somebody who knows you. They actually know who you are and how you show up, and perhaps even how you think or handle difficult situations. They've seen you in action. They've had experiences with you overcoming situations that were not easy and watching you do the very best that you can in those situations. A strong recommender may not have a big title, and that is absolutely okay. So when you're thinking of your recommenders, I want you to think of people who can actually speak about you on every level. How do you interact with patients? How do you think about challenging moments? What is your thought process? Those are things that I'm looking for in your letters of recommendation. Sometimes when we see letters of recommendation that have not been written by somebody that knows you or knows you well, it reads fine, but it doesn't convince us that the things that are being said are actually true. And many times the points that have been omitted from your letter of recommendation are things that stand out and speak louder than the things that are included. If you have a recommender who genuinely knows you and can speak to their experiences with you, it will read as such, and that's something that we're looking for. There's the importance of the professional recommendation letter and the academic perspective. Both are important. One is going to tell me, and this is a professional one, how you show up with patients, how you show up in a live action type moment. And the other one, the academic perspective, is going to let me know how you think. What's your problem solving look like? What's your communication look like? These are things that are important because it helps me understand who you are and how you're going to not only contribute to the profession and to the Campbell alumni family, but also how you're going to contribute and add to the cohort that you're joining. I know at our school, we look very closely at each of the personalities and characteristics of the applicants to see how, as a collective whole, this class is going to perform. And that's important to us. It is might be competitive to get in, and you might have to jump through some hoops to get in. But once you're in, we really genuinely are one big family, and we are working at the institution level to make sure that each of our students in all of our programs gets through their program. We want success for each one of you. And so it's important to see how you mesh together. And we get those things from your letter of recommendation. So at CPHS, at Campbell, we have 2 letters that we ask for. You are welcome to submit more than that. You can submit up to 4. Please do not exceed the 4 because they just won't get read. And then we don't know which ones you want us to read. And we're just going to read the top 4 that we see. One of them should be from a pharmacist. This can speak to your professional conduct and how you've shown up in the workplace. And one should be from either a science or a math professor. And we've asked for science or math just because it is such a heavy science math profession that we're really looking to see how you think and how you tackle some of those variables. Some graduate schools may not have an interview component to their application, but Campbell does, and it's an important part of the application process. I would like to pause, though, for just a minute and remind you that if you've gotten to the interview process, to the interview stage, and you've been asked to come for an interview, that should be a moment of celebration for you. Not every student that applies is going to be asked to come in for an interview. And so that is something that speaks volumes to us, and it should speak volumes to you as well. It's a milestone that you've hit. And so take a moment and pause and pat yourself on the back before we move on, because it's a pretty important milestone that you've just hit. The interview at Campbell is both virtual or in person. We offer both for our PharmD program. And so do some thinking about where you think you can perform the most effectively, because that is an option that is going to be given to you. The interview is going to be looking at things that are non-academic. So if you've been able to get an interview, it is very much because we know that you've met all of the academic requirements that we've put out to you. And now we're really trying to get a sense of who you are. We're going back to that individuality and that uniqueness that you bring to the table in the profession. In that interview, you should show up in a professional way because it is a professional interview. We call it a professional conversation is really what it is. We're just having a conversation with you because the interview is a two-way street. We are interviewing you, but I also hope that you're interviewing us because it's very important to both sides, me and you, that you match up with a university that reflects your values and your needs and is going to give you the type of education that you're looking for. So don't be afraid to ask the questions during your interview that might seem like tough questions because those are the things that are going to give you the answers that you need to make a decision on your end. On our end at Campbell, when we're interviewing you, we are looking for your professionalism. We're looking at your communication skills. We're looking at how you collaborate in a larger group. And we're looking at your critical thinking. Those are things that are really going to be on the spotlight for us while we're doing that. Some preparation tips. People often ask me, how do I get ready for it? I can tell you the one thing, if you've got some nerves about interviewing, do some mock interviews. If your school of choice doesn't offer that, call me because I do. We can run through the act of interviewing, mock-ups. I can make life very, very tense for you on a mock interview and bring out those nerves, and then we can dissect them and look at those and give you some tips on how to move forward. And also let you know what you've done really, really well, so you know that you're also shining in a couple of areas as well. Things you should be looking for is make sure your lighting is good, especially if you are online. Make sure you've got your hands under control. I often will see people with their hands moving all over the place, and it can be a huge distraction. And so those are just some really quiet tips that you can work on so that you can show up professionally and be very focused with what's going on. Oftentimes in an interview, you will come across different types of themes, and it's not only us drilling questions at you, but we want to see how you work with the other students that are on the same interview. And so we might put you in a scenario a situation where there's a scenario-based question. And in that question, I want to see how you're working with other students to come up with your answers. And so that's something that you should probably be prepared for as well. This is really your opportunity to show me how you fit with my values and my university. And so allow yourself to shine here, because this can be the component that really stands out to us after we've had a moment to interact with you and exchange ideas with you. So a very important and wonderful part of the application process. At Campbell, we have a holistic review of our applicants. And what does that mean? We really do believe that you are bigger than just your grades, bigger than the academics, bigger than one event that may have happened. We're looking at all of those things. They are each important to who you are, but they are only a portion of who you are. And so we really are looking at your strengths in combination with maybe your weaknesses and how they balance out. We're looking at your life experiences, and that includes not only your life experience, but also the moments that you've had that have been really tough, or your volunteer experience. All of that goes into how we're looking at you as a human being, as an individual, and how you can contribute to our program. We're obviously looking at the commitment that you have to the PharmD program and ensuring that this is something that you are committed to doing, not only because you're going into a program that is 4 years of rigorous work, but also because you're going to hopefully leave that program, graduate that program, and go into the profession that is in desperate need of professionals that are going to lead the way and pave the way to a greater tomorrow. And so these are all things that we're looking at when we're looking at our applicants. The great news is that, again, I want to say this, any of the weaknesses that you might have can be counterbalanced by the strengths that you have. And that's pretty awesome, knowing that you can put to bed the whole concept of I need to be perfect or flawless. No, you can have some flaws. You will have some flaws, and that's okay, because I'm going to be looking at all of the areas of you to balance that out. I can't speak that every school does that, but I can say that Campbell does that. Final takeaways. A competitive applicant is going to tell a very clear, compelling story. There should be a theme that runs through your life that points in only one direction, and that is the direction of pharmacy and your commitment to that in every area of your life. It will let me know that you are prepared, that you are professional, and that you are moving forward with the same values that CPHS has and the same purpose that we have. I want to reassure you right now that you do not need to navigate this process alone. All universities should have somebody like me, an admissions counselor who works with students and helps them along this path, because let's be frank, it can be overwhelming. And I don't know that any one university does it the same as the next university. We like to keep you guys on your toes that way, but it also can make things very overwhelming. And so reach out to the team that is around you, no matter what school you're speaking to. There should be somebody that can support you and help you navigate the system. And I encourage you, ask questions at every turn. Ask a question. I've included my name here, obviously, my phone number and my email, and I welcome you to screen cap this, take a picture of it, write it down. Reach out to me. It doesn't matter where you're applying to. This is something that I do and I love to do, actually, is working with students to make sure that they are getting their answers met and are being supported, especially our first generation students who don't necessarily have a lot of resources around them of family members that have gone to school before them. And so I encourage you, no matter who you are, please reach out. The QR code that is here, and hopefully you can see it around the square that is around it. Here it is again, it's the second one, but the QR code leads you directly to our website, to the CPHS website. There you will see all the information on our PharmD program, including admissions requirements, timing, etc. So if there's any questions, please reach out or let me know. And I'd like to see if there's any questions that you might have. And if you're feeling too shy, just drop it in the chat.
We do actually have one question here. It says, what if after the interview you get waitlisted?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I'm glad you answered that or asked that. Thank you. Waitlisting does not mean denial. And I really want to hit that message home to you guys. A waitlist is this is a really moving, it's a moving target, if you will, because every school that you apply to is going to have a different deadline, a different process. Ours at Campbell is a rolling admission, so we're always looking at applicants. So there's always movement in our waitlist. There's always movements until a student has decided that they want to come to us and they've deposited. So being put on a wait list does not mean that you've been denied. It should not be considered that you've been denied. It should be considered exactly what it is, which is waitlisted. You may get a phone call to come and attend that school that has what put you on a wait list. You may not. And so then that's a discussion that you need to have with yourself on what's your plan B. If this was your top school, which is your second school? And I don't think that's bad advice, actually. I would go into this doing two things if I were a student. One is I would probably rate my top three schools, which one is the one you really want to get into, and rate it down to three. And I would also, if possible, put forward a budget that you've saved for the deposits that you're going to need to put down, because it's quite possible that you're going to get accepted at school number three and you're really still waiting to see what happens with school number one. And you might need to put down your deposit money and be prepared to lose that, which is something that if I were doing, I would probably recommend doing, just to allow yourself that freedom to go where you really want to go. So waitlisted just means that there are some questions about your application. They're looking at it, they're thinking about it, or they don't have space for you right now, but that does not mean that space will not open up. So keep your chin up. You're not out of the game yet.
Great. Um, are you ever too old to apply? This person says they're almost 60 and interested in transitioning from being a patent attorney to doing regulatory affairs.
Ooh, I love that actually. Are you too old? Heck no, you're not too old. In fact, I think I read somewhere that the average person changes their careers about 7 times in a lifetime. So it doesn't mean you have to change it 7 times, but it's not impossible to change it 7 times. So are you too old? No, sir. You're not too old to do something like that. I encourage you to reach out. Let's have a conversation, look at your transcripts, see if there's any coursework that you need to take over. There's no time limit on the coursework that you've done. So any of the degrees or education you have behind you doesn't expire. And yeah, I think you'd bring a really great perspective to any profession that you go into. So no, I encourage you to jump in with both feet.
How many programs do you recommend applying to?
That's a good one. So depending on the program, and I know here we're speaking about pharmacy, it really depends on the competitiveness of the program. I would easily recommend applying to a minimum of three. Would be, there's no magic number here though, guys. So any answer is your answer. I know a lot of students will apply to 7 or 8, seems to be the average. That is with very competitive programs. And again, be prepared that we're not all going to get back to you with our decisions at the right time or in the order that you want us to. But I do suggest that you apply to schools that you're interested in only, and apply to as many that you're prepared to go to is really the question. That's a personal choice, but definitely more than one. Definitely more than one. Minimum of three. I think let me just clarify, minimum of three. And I think if we're hitting 7, 8, we're probably at the top end of what is kind of the norm, but that doesn't mean you can't do more.
About the letter of recommendation, what if an applicant has been out of school for some time and does not have a professor to reach out to? How should they proceed?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And so if you don't have a professor that you can go back to, because I'm okay with you going back to a professor from years ago. If there's a relationship there and that professor is going to remember you, then I suggest you do that. But if you don't have that professor to do that, then I would try and get yourself a second pharmacist, so that you've got that kind of dual thinking. A pharmacist will already naturally be able to talk to us about your professionalism, but will also be able to talk to us about your ability to do the job because they themselves are doing the job. So that would be my recommendation, is I would come forward with 2 pharmacists if that were your situation.
I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah.
My GPA is not strong from 2005, and I'm in my 40s, and it's now that I finally am ready to do this. Do you have any advice?
Mhm. So the GPA not being strong, so it's a little bit of an ambiguous kind of wording without knowing the exact number or how not strong it is, and you don't need to answer that. But because of our holistic approach, if you've just missed that 2.75, say you're at a 2.6, a 2.5, I would consider applying anyway. And the reason for that is I'm hoping that there's other things in your application that are strong. It might be the experience or the perspective that you bring after being out of school for a number of years, which I'm sensing might be the case in here. It might be the life experiences that you're bringing. It might be your letters of recommendation or your personal statement. So again, because of our holistic approach, we don't look at everything as not 100% about your grade. It's about all of the other components that make you you. If your GPA is lower than that 2.5, then I would suggest you take some courses through like a community college, take some aggressive science or math driven courses to show your academic readiness to the program. And so I would just take a course or two. You don't have to do a whole degree, just to show that you've got the thinking that it takes to do this program. You're always welcome to reach out to me or to send me a private message, or I'm on this evening from 5 to 7. You can come and ask me some questions, and we can talk more about it if that's helpful.
And I think with that, we're right at time. So thank you so much, Sheila, for that great presentation. Thank you again for everyone attending the session. Like I said in the introduction, if you have any questions that we could not answer today, feel free to visit Sheila and in the Campbell University booth from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern. Please join me in thanking Sheila for her time and insights, and please enjoy the rest of the fair. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.